The Oklahoma Sooners have pushed all the chips into the middle for the 2026 season.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire, and on today's show, we're going to talk about SEC teams making a push for an Oklahoma quarterback target in the third segment. Is it possible the SEC could step away from the NCAA altogether? But let's start with what Oklahoma's done this offseason that shows that, hey, 2026 is a year that they are seriously looking at making a run. As we prepared for the 2025 season, a lot of people thought, hey, if Oklahoma could go 8-4, 9-3, contend for a playoff spot, be in the mix in November, that it would be a good season. I remember even Dusty Dvorak, Oklahoma legend, right? Talking about if an 8-4 season happened for the Oklahoma Sooners, he would constitute that a good season. Oklahoma went 10-2. They exceeded expectations and in a lot of ways played with house money, given that they didn't really have an offense that was contender level. They had an offense that was good enough to ride a defense that was championship contender level. But as we prepared for 2025, many people looked to the 2026 season saying, hey, this is the year that it should all come together for the Oklahoma Sooners. John Mateer would be in year two. Your young freshman offensive linemen would be ready to step into significant roles. They fast forwarded, they stepped into those significant roles in 2025. You had a defense that was going to grow up a lot over the course of the 2025 season with the anticipation that they were going to be even better in 2026. Your David Stones, your Jaden Jacksons, your now what we've seen from Taylor Wine, your PJ Adebaware, is the expectation is he was going to be a big, big difference maker that season. And then your young cornerback room, Eli Bowen, Cortland Guillory, I think everybody was anticipating they would be facing some growing pains in the 2025 season, and that really wasn't the case. Did they have some moments where they gave up some plays? Absolutely. Cornerbacks are going to get beat. That's football. But by and large, they were really, really good. So everybody was looking at the growth of basically your young interior defensive linemen, David Stone and Jaden Jackson, along with the other pieces that were young on that defense, and saying, hey, the defense is going to be really, really good in 2025, but it could be even better in 2026. And I'm seeing that opinion being thrown out quite a bit, despite the losses of R. Mason Thomas, Marvin Jones Jr., Dominic Williams, and Grayson Halton. Big losses. But a lot of people think that this defense could be even better going into next season, which, hey, I'm not going to sit here and argue it. I think there's potential for that to be the case. But where I feel like Oklahoma has gone all in on this season has a lot to do with their portal acquisitions and their coaching acquisitions. There were opportunities for Oklahoma to make the sentimental hire, to go with guys that have ties to either Brent Venables from his coaching days as a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma or Clemson, or guys that have connections to the university. There were opportunities for them to do just that, but they went with guys they felt like were the best option at that position, whether it was Deland McCullough or LaMar Morgan or Jason Witten. They went after guys they felt like were going to elevate the program because of their track record, because of their experience. Jason Witten may not have collegiate experience, but he has significant high school coaching experience, and the name just resonates right across the football landscape. But the hires of Deland McCullough and LaMar Morgan, they moved the needle from a development and recruiting aspect more than what you might have expected from a more sentimental hire. And this is an area where I feel like Brent Venables has grown a lot, is that he's looking for guys that are just really good coaches, regardless of his connection or their connection to the university. And here's what he had to say about LaMar Morgan and Deland McCullough. He says, I'm incredibly excited about the addition of two fantastic football coaches, great men, great leaders. Our players are going to love learning from them. Both jobs, the assistant coaching jobs, were highly coveted, and they went through an exhaustive searches for both positions. Deland and LaMar separated from the pack with their extensive experience, their knowledge, and their ability to teach, lead, fit in with our staff, and connect on the recruiting trail. There was no compromise in any of those areas, and both knocked it out of the park during the interview process. Our players will be the beneficiaries of their leadership, coaching, and development. He goes on to say, these are guys who had several other NFL and college opportunities, but chose to come to Norman. They recognize the value of the Oklahoma brand, the players they can recruit, and the staff they can align with. They were both looking for a place to call home, a place where they felt they could win a championship and step into an environment where they could win at the highest level, be with great people, and coach great players. Again, going for assistants that elevate the program, that bring with them a cachet of experience and development and recruiting ability that take Oklahoma to another level. Big time additions on the assistant coaching front, but also with what they've done in the transfer portal, the additions of Trell Harris, Parker Livingston, Marion Harris, those three right there, difference makers from day one that they step foot on campus. And then you look at the Cole Sullivan addition at linebacker, you bring back Kip Lewis, you bring back a number of guys that Jim Nagy and this staff look to retain. Absolutely huge. And then you add some guys with big time upside in a Kenny Ozawalu, Peyton Joseph. But really, it's the 4 or 5 guys that they added on through the transfer portal that are day one starters for Oklahoma. They pushed their chips into the middle. They said, hey, listen, we've got a core of players right now that we've got to continue to build around, and we've got to invest in. We got to be aggressive in adding talent to go along with John Mateer and Isaiah Satania and Kip Lewis and David Stone and Jaden Jackson. The window is now. We cannot bank on all these young guys developing and growing. Hey, could they develop and grow into significant roles? Absolutely they could. But you can't waste a window. You can't waste an opportunity on hope. Hope is not a plan. It's not a strategy. And so Oklahoma went into the offseason, especially in the transfer portal, and said, hey, we've got to significantly upgrade our offense to be able to contend for a national title. We've got a defense that's ready to go, right? We need an offense that can hold up their end of the bargain and be difference makers every single Saturday on the field. And Oklahoma's done just that. So kudos to Brent Venables, Jim Nagy, and the Oklahoma staff for saying, hey, listen, we're not going to rest on what we did in 2025 and consider a 10-2 season, a playoff appearance to be good enough. No, we're going to go into this offseason looking to see how can we be better than what we were. And they did just that. They've made themselves better through the offseason. Now the proof is going to be in the pudding. They're going to go out there and have to execute every single Saturday and make sure that they're the better team and they come out on top. But they've done the work in the offseason to make this roster better, to make the coaching staff better, and this team will be better in 2026 as a football team than they were a year ago. Is it possible that the SEC could look to say goodbye to the NCAA altogether? Let's dive into that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get $75 towards a sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's episode is also brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Ella Parker had a tremendous day against Washington in the finale of the Mary Nutter Classic, going 4 for 4 with 3 home runs. My goodness, she reminds us all of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, the grit and the eye never quit. We put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're looking for more Locked On Sooners without the ads, go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club, or you can go to lockedonsooners.supercast.com for, again, ad-free audio of Locked On Sooners wherever you download and listen to podcasts. Plus, you'll get an invite to a members-only chat featuring Jay and I and others across the Locked On network. We'll give you opportunities to ask us questions for mailbag episodes of Locked On Sooners over there, and you can just talk ball with Jay and I. Again, lockedonsooners.supercast.com for $5 a month or $50 per year. If you've noticed, my voice is a little bit different. I've been fighting a cold. That's why I was not on the Friday show with Jay. But yeah, just been battling a cold for the last, half a week or so. But here, the show must go on. Jay is traveling for work, so we're going to make this work today. So thank you for bearing with us and making Locked On Sooners your first listen. Matt Hayes over at USA Today Sports wrote a really interesting article in the wake of the Trinidad Chambliss decision down there in Mississippi. And you could even throw the Joey Aguilar decision down in Tennessee into the conversation as well. The differentiation and the inequity that we see in eligibility decisions from the NCAA, along with the ongoing debate and dichotomy of opinions between the SEC and the Big Ten on the future of the playoff, has Matt Hayes over there at USA Today Sports wondering if a breakaway from the NCAA would actually be in the SEC's best interests. Now, this sounds crazy. It does feel at some point we're going to be in this big P4 Super League, and the SEC is going to very much be a part of that. But the SEC just separating itself from the NCAA altogether just feels wild. But here's what he had to say, really. And as absurd as it sounds, basically saying, what if the NCAA ruled or went on to fight and appeal the Trinidad Chambliss decision, and Ole Miss and the SEC to say, hey, you know what? We're going to let them play regardless, and we don't really care what the courts say. What are they going to do? He argues that the remaining 15 SEC members, or even a majority, may actually support Ole Miss and its fight against the NCAA, may take a stand too, because they want the ultimate payoff, a league of their own. No more bickering with the Big Ten about some dopey 24-team playoff. No more adhering to make it up as you go along, enforcement from the NCAA. Just the SEC, its own rulebook and television partner, and a fat revenue generating playoff of its own. His discussion basically saying, because the NCAA can't seem to get eligibility right, because the Big Ten is grasping at straws for a 24-team playoff, and because the SEC has a significant media partner in its back pocket, do they really need the NCAA? Could the SEC decide, hey, listen, crowning an SEC champion is just as significant as crowning a national champion? Now, there'd be a lot of discussion about that and a lot of naysayers, especially considering the Big Ten has won the last 3 national champions. There'd be maybe some discussions about how the SEC is afraid of the Big Ten. That's not going to be the case. The SEC would line up and play against the Big Ten every single day, every day of the week. And that's not going to be an issue. But what I find interesting here is some of the details that Matt goes into. The SEC could create a 6-team playoff at the end of their schedule and crown an SEC champion. They could create an SEC only schedule where you play your 7 opponents, or create more divisions. You play your 7 in division and then play 5 from the other division, rotating every year. So you're playing a 12-game SEC schedule, and then you play a 6-team playoff. How much more revenue could the SEC make? That's part of the reason they went to a 9-game conference schedule altogether, was because, not necessarily just because of the Big Ten pressure, the Big 12 pressure to go to 9 games, but because Greg Sankey, SEC administrators believed, hey, this is going to get us a little bit more money in our back pocket to help fund our programs, to help create more competitive rosters. Excuse me while I take a drink. And the SEC would ultimately be a big beneficiary of just playing themselves, not having to worry about non-conference inequities. Would this actually happen? No, it's very unlikely. I don't see a scenario in which the SEC breaks away from the NCAA, in large part due to Greg Sankey having said it at different times in the past. They want to maintain a level of collegial responsibility to the game by interacting and engaging with the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, the Group of 5, Group of 6 now, about the playoff. The SEC doesn't want to just say, hey, it's our way or no way. It's the Big Ten's way or no way. SEC, Big Ten, Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey have all the power in the playoff discussion, but they want to include the other decision makers that are a part of the playoff committee. They don't want to just, ram a playoff decision down everybody's throats. They want this to be what's good for college football. I've seen Greg Sankey mention that on a number of occasions. The other part of this where I find it to be a little far-fetched is what happens to some of these great rivalries. South Carolina, Clemson, Florida, Florida State, Florida, Miami, Georgia, Georgia Tech. What happens to those if the SEC goes to an SEC only schedule? Well, those games would go away. So I as interesting as Matt Hayes' idea is, and maybe as fed up and frustrated with college football as SEC members might be because of the NCAA, as fed up as they are with the NCAA as they might be, I just don't see this being a realistic end to what happens in the future. I think what's more likely is you see a big super league come to fruition where it's the SEC, a number of members from the Big Ten, several members from the Big 12, and they create a league that operates maybe outside of the NCAA and crowns their own national champion. But I don't see a scenario in which the SEC just fully breaks away. That seems really unlikely, but it's an interesting idea. I know that as part of the 2014 playoff, part of the discussion is having a 4-team conference playoff to help guide the 2014 playoff, if that makes sense. But it's all still a bit of a mess, and these conferences still have a lot to figure out as far as, playoff scheduling goes, figuring out the calendar and having the season actually end within a reasonable time frame, figuring out the transfer rules and eligibility rules, all of those feel like bigger issues than playoff expansion. I think playoff at 12 teams is just fine. Figuring out eligibility issues, figuring out the college football calendar, those are bigger issues to me than the playoff, than this future super league that people have theorized about. They've got bigger fish to fry. But the NCAA needs to lock in and figure out some better rules so that programs, schools, players can operate with a lot more clarity than what everybody's operating under right now. I mean, we're still waiting on an Owen Heineke decision. It's February 22nd. The NFL Combine is coming. I don't think it's likely that Owen Heineke returns to college at this point because we haven't heard anything. But we shouldn't have to wait this long on a decision. So, all right, you've got an Oklahoma target that looks to be trending towards the Sooners, also getting some pursuit from big time SEC programs. We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. I love this futures time of the year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can you win your pick, win cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Got to take a drink. All right, Jamison Roberts, quarterback out of Alabama, has been projected to Oklahoma on a number of occasions by a number of recruiting analysts from multiple networks. But it's not over until the fat lady sings. The Oklahoma Sooners are going to have to do battle with Florida and Georgia in this recruitment. They may be the favorite right now, but we've all seen how recruiting can change and on a dime. Like a pursuit can be won or lost in a moment. And right now, Jamison Roberts trending towards Oklahoma, but that could change again. So Florida is also big in the mix. He's scheduled a visit with the Gators. He's going to visit Florida on March 3rd, but then be back at Oklahoma on March 7th. He said of Florida, I feel any team that's led by Coach John Sumrall has a chance. He's an amazing human being and an even better coach. Of Oklahoma, he said relationships and quarterback development. Coach Ben Arbuckle and Coach Kuzieski are some of the best in the country at developing quarterbacks, and I'm all about learning. But to throw another little wrinkle into the mix, Georgia offered Jamison back on the 21st of February. He also got an offer from South Carolina back on the 11th, Iowa State, and Colorado earlier this month as well. So the recruitment is picking up. He's getting more recognition for his ability. He's out there at camp right now. And our guy, Brian Smith of the Portal Show here on Locked On, recruiting analyst and transfer portal analyst, he was very complimentary of Jamison Roberts, sent us a couple clips of him doing some 7-on-7 stuff, but his profile is picking up. He's now a composite 4-star. He's considered the number 6 quarterback in the class by ESPN, and he's got all the tools. He's got good size, 6'3". He's somebody who's thrown with great accuracy. He's got a good deep ball. He's an athletic quarterback. He moves well in the pocket and seems to have really good fundamentals and really good ball placement. So this is going to be one to watch because you get a Georgia in the mix, you get a Florida in the mix. And not only are those programs that have a legacy, whether it's, Florida and their success over the last 30 years or Georgia and their success with Kirby Smart, they've got NIL backing. They're able to come to the table and make rev share offers and NIL offers that could match or exceed what Oklahoma is able to do. So much of it's going to come down to the relationships that Oklahoma's already built, getting in on the ground floor in his recruitment. They were one of the biggest teams to offer the earliest, and they've built a great relationship with him over the course of his recruitment. Now they've just got to seal the deal and finish this thing off with a signing. I've mentioned that he's going to be a consensus 4-star across the board when this is all said and done, and he'll probably be a top 10 quarterback in the class. And Oklahoma's got themselves in a really, really good position to land one of the best quarterbacks in the class. And I think Jamison Roberts has the tools and the ability to be a big-time difference maker at the collegiate level. Again, size, accuracy, big arm, good athleticism, could come in and be a guy that pushes for a significant role, either as a backup or even as a starter when he gets to Oklahoma. Not too far-fetched, I don't think, but Oklahoma's going to have to go the distance in this recruiting battle and try and win a big one. But Florida and Georgia could throw some kinks in their recruitment. Big weekend across the board for Oklahoma athletics. We'll have some discussion on softball on a bonus episode on Monday afternoon. But Oklahoma women's basketball picked up a big win over Tennessee. Women's gymnastics picked up a big win over LSU in a 1-2 battle on Friday night. Men baseball had a 3-game sweep where they just were lights out at the plate and from the mound, only allowed 1 earned run. Again, Coppin State, not a huge challenge, but Oklahoma took care of business where they were supposed to. Softball, again, had a pretty strong week at Mary Nutter, but they lost to Long Beach State of all teams, but picked up wins over Duke and Washington and Cal. So it's like up and down, but ultimately, had a 5-1 weekend out there in California before returning home this week at Love's Field. Just a few games left in the regular season for Oklahoma women's basketball. They, picked up their 4th straight win. And this again against Tennessee, 100-93. It was a big scoring effort by the Sooners. It was their third straight ranked win of the last 4 games. Again, beat Florida, beat Alabama, beat Georgia, beat Tennessee, and then they'll close the season against Arkansas and Missouri. Oklahoma women's basketball likely to be a top 10 team when the AP and coaches polls come out on Monday and Tuesday. Probably locked in at least a 4 seed where they'll host in the NCAA tournament, barring anything unforeseen over the next, couple weeks with the regular season finales coming and the NCAA or the SEC tournament. But you're going to get to see NCAA tournament basketball at the Lloyd Noble Center for rounds 1 and 2 because Oklahoma is likely to host. Now, will they be a 4 seed, be a 3 seed? We'll see. Can they avoid UConn in the first round? That'll be the big question as well. That's a team that Oklahoma had to face in the Sweet 16 last year. Hopefully they get to avoid the Huskies or the Bruins in the first round. We'll see how that plays out. But right now, kind of sitting on that 3-4 line. They can get some favorable outcomes over the final few weeks before Selection Sunday. Man, that'd be huge for them if they can end up avoiding UConn, UCLA, or both. That'd be incredible. But if they do, then they'd have to face one of these top teams in the SEC, whether it's a South Carolina, a Texas, or a Vandy. It's going to be fascinating. But Jenny Baranczyk, man, has this thing humming. KJ Kindler has her team looking like they're on track to contend or even win another national title. Patty Gasso's crew and OU softball, despite the upset loss to Long Beach State, when they lock in, man, they're something to see, man. It's a sight to see. And then Skip Johnson's crew, they look like they're going to have a legit shot to get to Omaha. They got a big series against Arizona State coming up this next weekend that will really let us know what Oklahoma is going to be about this year. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and bearing with me with my voice. Hopefully we're back to normal for Tuesday, but appreciate all the everydayers here to check it out, and make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. You can follow my guy Jay at Unfair Sports and check out his channel covering Oklahoma over at Unfair Sports. You can follow me at John 9 Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at Soonerswire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.